think Canada is rising to the forefront as we weather the economic storms that, are traveling globally right now. And I loved what you said, your battle cry, investors, entrepreneurs, Canada, we can do great things.
Yeah.
We can do great things.
We do great things.
We
just don't tell each other we're doing great things.
We're doing great things. We're doing great things, and get more of the really staid investors that are highly conservative and value liquidity and security, and say, you know what, I'm not suggesting you shy away from that. That's a good strategy, and it's done Canada very well. But what if we were to take 5 to 10% of your investment dollars, consider them more discretionary, we talked about that in terms of penny stock investing, and say, okay, can startups be an asset class in my portfolio? They certainly are in the US when you look at shares posted in second market, establishing a environment which values startups as an asset class, because you can start to create liquidity around it, you can start to create valuation, you can start to create trading. I think we can do that in Canada. We're just, in terms of what you said, maturing and coming through the maturation. We don't have the systems in place to do that. We need to tell our story better. And it starts with investors willing. They have to be willing to take the entrepreneurs are already willing. They're already out there. They're bootstrapping. They're creative. They're doing all kinds of cool stuff. We've got great tech centers in Alberta. We've got great tech centers in BC. You look at what's happening in the gaming industry in Kelowna. You look at what's happening in the mobile industry in Vancouver. We've got a really cool corridor in Western Canada. But when you look at the stats of where the investment dollars are coming, they're largely still coming from foreign investment. Our domestic investment is not rising to meet the challenge, and venture capital is constantly under criticism, primarily because they stay conservative and they stay out where things are revenue generating or touching profit, and they're not going seed and they're not going pre-revenue. There's been some pull back in that direction, but it's general investor confidence that, you know what, Canada is a world-class center. We have world-class opportunities. We've already demonstrated that. Let's keep investing in Canada, and let's build the ecosystem together.
No, I agree with that. And you see there's a little bit of a backlash. Even there's this wave of thinking around sort of the 37 signals model, right? The rework model that says, just do it in your spare time. Don't even get angel funding. Just make revenue. And that's another thing. If you think about, if we go from that sort of mainframe to cluster to grid, if you think about how most of our governments invest, like you talked about the tech centers, we tend to do brick and mortar rent, get everybody under the same roof, whether it's Innovate Calgary or a NRC center or, more of a sort of a techno park, sort of
even
an industrial park.
The new guys, Calgary startup, their YYC little
Accelerate
thing.
YYC, Yeah, and we try, it's the idea that if you got everybody together, what I say to people is, imagine if this was the business model. So we all make shoes. Let's all rent a building and we'll all make shoes together, and that way we'll make the most innovative shoes in the world. And the answer is no, you won't. You'll all start to copy each other and there'll be this groupthink that happens and whatever. But what you need is like a shoemaker and a fashion designer and an architect and whatever, and then you're all doing this creative venture. And then a construction worker, and that you're all thinking about construction and innovation, and you're doing that together, but you're influencing each other in a heterogeneous way. And we still have that model of cheap rent, build a building, get everybody doing the same thing together, and then there's knowledge spillover, and it's more efficient in terms of hiring people. Look at the data, folks. That doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. I read a really great report that they did at Cambridge University, and they looked at all of the little startups around Cambridge, how many of them actually got knowledge spillover from Cambridge, and it was like 12%. Where did they get the information from? Their friends, people they'd worked with before.
Well, that's the normal flow of communication, for sure.
Right. It's people I trust, people I've worked with before. So there is the spin-off, but the knowledge spilling over, it's not happening. The other thing we do is we confuse technology transfer, that is sort of, I'm going to come up with an idea that's going to make money forever, right? So I'm going to come up with a new way of doing something medical or technical. I'm going to file a patent on it.
Right.
And then there you go. I've got that asset and I'm going to reap the rewards, Well, we all know Alberta, everywhere else, we've got dusty binders full of patents that have never been commercialized. And those that have, there's many that have, there's a certain model. But the space you work in, how many of your clients file patents?
it becomes a part of it later on.
How many
But
of your
first-
software businesses?
Yeah, the first part is just get it up, get it running, get
and
to
you
market.
might do a process patent, you might do a technology patent, especially if it's a hardware software blend. But a lot of the businesses I've worked for, they'll definitely do some trademarking. They may do a process patent way down the road.
Exactly.
But many of them will never file a patent ever. So we measure sort of this manufacturing-based technology transfer scientific model, and yet there's this type of cluster, they call them alpha clusters, where they're always reinventing themselves and coming up with new things, and whether it's fashion or gaming software, that there isn't really time. And if you do a patent, there'll be maybe one or two. And the ones I've been in, I mean, I've worked for Schlumberger, so they have lots of patents around hardware and things like that. But it tends to be more around process, so it's a business process patent. And if we just measure based on patents, and that's what we're looking for as an indicator of success, I think we miss these whole alpha clusters that are these nimble, continually reinventing themselves, early revenue,
You gotta be.
often changing their model. Well, how do we measure the success for that, and how do we educate around it? And that model of let's put them all in a scientific building and get them to pump out one patent a year. Okay, awesome. That's part of the ecosystem, but that's not my experience with the sort of high-tech driven businesses that I work for.